Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Scaling Deep podcast. I have another fascinating guest today, Kelsey Formost, who I just found out that she's actually an actress turned copywriter turned membership business owner. I think I've got that right. Fun
Yes,
fact.
that's exactly right.
So
Yes. No.
tell us more about your acting. Forget
Yeah,
memberships.
no, it's such a fun, I love starting there because one of the things that I think brings all entrepreneurs together is I feel that we've all pivoted multiple times in our life. I have never once met an entrepreneur online, especially who has been doing it since college. It's
Yeah,
almost never the case. It's always like I was doing this other thing that was unfulfilling to me, and then I created the business that I wanted, or I completely changed my life and now I'm doing this. So I
except for
love
the really
sharing.
famous people that like the successful people who they were just born that way, driven that way. That was their passion, their hobby, their lifestyle, their everything. And those are the household names. And then there's everyone else who's got that, yeah, I want to do this, but there's other things that I also care about and dream about. So I can't put all of my everything into this one thing. And therefore we kind of bump along as opposed to just like being wired for like our purpose in life was entrepreneurship.
Oh my gosh, completely,
Yeah.
completely. I absolutely understand what you're saying. And I will add to that that often when I look at people that I admire, like I think about was it either Amy Porterfield or Jenna Kutcher? One of them used to work at Pinterest, right? So they had this corporate job that they then turned
A corporate
into, and
job
then
in
they
the online industry
in the
though,
online
right?
industry,
Yeah.
right? So I guess what I'm saying is no past is wasted. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you had a job flipping burgers at your local joint and now you want to be an online course creator. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you work in tech, like whatever, wherever you're coming from, if you are feeling the calling, the pull to create an online business, you can do it. As Lisa said before we hit record, there is no set path per se.
Yeah.
However, there are tools. There is like things that you can do to make you more likely to be successful. And that's what Lisa and I are about demystifying for you guys.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, however, background does matter to some extent. Like I find that people come and to me and they want to build a membership program because they like the idea of it. And there's nothing wrong with having a big vision that's really far away from where you are right now. But just keep in mind that you're getting like flirted with in a parasocial way by people who are mass marketers and they
Yeah.
are born to win and they're driven to make money and they don't have they've sort of repressed certain things that you might not be willing to repress. And that's the what if I can't serve everyone perfectly. Like it can be really difficult to start putting ourselves out there. And so we have to do our background work on learning all the things and then getting our head around how comfortable we feel putting our best and putting the biggest vision forward. Cause so that's a total different rabbit hole, but I had to say that. I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in many aspects. And I think that, yes, background does matter, but it doesn't have to be a cage either.
No.
I think that a lot of people hold themselves back from pursuing an idea, whether it's a membership or an online
Yeah.
course or anything to do with online business, because they feel that they'll never be able to measure up to these huge names that they're comparing themselves to. And
Yeah.
that's not fair, right? It's about meeting yourself where you are.
Because you don't have to be that either. Like you can be highly
Right.
successful, have great profit margins and not be as huge and still have a very fulfilling business and vocation.
Yes. Yes. And you mentioned this what, about it being your why.
Yeah.
So which I feel like might be a good segue to go into how
Yeah.
I found my way to having a membership from being a successful Hollywood actress.
Yeah. Tell us the whole
So
story.
yeah, so I was a theater nerd growing up. I was really shy in person, and theater and being on stage gave me this sort of excuse to come alive in front of people. And I found that what I really loved was actually connecting emotionally with people. And I pursued a career in the arts. I was super successful. For all intents and purposes, I was paying my rent by being an actress, which, if you know anything about Hollywood, that is a big deal. Was I famous? No. Was I on famous things? Yes. I was on shows like Modern Family and New Girl, and I was in a movie with Zac Efron. But what people don't necessarily realize, although maybe more so now with the strike that's happening currently as we're recording this, there are so few opportunities for actors in particular and for artists in general to do what they love without somebody else saying yes to them first.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't just go act if I felt like it. I had to get the job. 90% of acting was getting the job. And long story short, the lifestyle of being an actor was no longer the lifestyle that I wanted. And so I started to ask myself some very deep, very important dark night of the soul questions like, why am I here?
Yeah.
What do I feel I'm meant to be doing? What
Yeah.
are the gifts that I was given? What do I not like doing? Just as important of a question as what do you like doing? Right. And I found my way to copywriting. And if anyone is unfamiliar with what copywriting is the art and science of using words to get a reader to take a desired action. So, what I found was there was all this, sorry to hate on men, I'm not trying to hate on men, but like very male heavy, sales heavy, money heavy copywriter language out
You can
there
say
that
the
I
word masculine and then it's less about.
masculine. There you go. Yeah, just this conquer energy and like this, I don't know, like money that felt icky energy.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Think used car salesman, right? And I hate it. And I thought, I know there are so many people creating online businesses and brick and mortar businesses, small businesses who have really wonderful things to share with the world, but that don't fit this like traditional copywriting style. So what I did was I took what I knew from entertainment and from script writing, and I thought, how do I help people tell a story? How do I help people be like the hero of somebody else's story where they can help them go from the beginning? In a script, you call it the opening image, like what's life like before.
Mm-hmm.
Their business is the inciting incident. They go on their hero's journey, and then there's a transformation at the end, right? It's the same for online business
Well,
as it is in
yeah, I was going to say, so that's a really interesting, clear transition from doing what you do. Cause I mean, I have no idea what acting is all about because I've never had an interest in it. I'm like the opposite. I'm the extrovert who actually likes real stuff. Like I find being on the stage, like I have no desire, right? Even like for any reason. And it's, I don't know anything about what it's like to do that, thing that we are so captivated by that we can't stop watching a show because we're like living someone else's story, and it's so much that goes into that. And I love that you bring that up because it's such a great example to just illustrate the power of storytelling. It's like that's how we absorb everything, and we have since the beginning of time.
Oh, and if I may add a nerdy statistic,
Oh
the
yeah.
human brain is, I think it's 80% more likely to remember story than fact. So if you, for
Yeah.
example, let's say you are in a history class, you're going to remember the story of a soldier who lost his leg at the Battle of Gettysburg. And he heard Paul Revere, whatever it is, versus like Paul Revere rang the bell at this. You're hardwired to remember stories. And that's because it triggers something in your brain where you imagine yourself
Hmm.
in the story. And that's what the best copywriting does. And that's what the best businesses do is they imagine themselves as their ideal customer and think, how can I show them how I'm going to weave into their story, how they can, use this sort of pathway that I'm creating,
Yeah.
whether it's with a physical product or a digital product or a membership, whatever it is, and they can imagine themselves transforming because of this thing that I'm offering them.
Yeah. So that's a great case for everyone to do more storytelling in your copywriting and in your content in general. Like, yes, I mean, I've always loved copy because there's such a science to copy to me. And
Yeah.
yes, there's an art, and the art is that empathy piece, but I always get tripped up on the actual storytelling part. Like I can do it. I can follow other people's formulas for that. But when I think about how I share what I do, still have a hard time thinking in terms of how am I telling a story, because it's so contrived. So what we do naturally though is just tell our own story. So I love talking about, like, in my own solo podcast, well, here's what I'm working on right now, and here's what's working for me, and here's what's not working. And that's like
Yeah.
sharing the story of the journey in time that is less dramatic and less constructed in a way that I'm sure I could get better at it. If I ever got really famous, I would put more effort into it. But it is doing similar things, because if you're just telling, here's how to do this thing, it's not memorable. It's not easy to retain. And people are actually learning the same things over and over again, like over and
Yeah.
over and over and over again. It doesn't end. So how many times they hear it and how many different illustrations of it is going to actually help them get it.
Yeah. Well, one of the best hacks as a professional copywriter that I help people with is I ask them, what are your ideal customers typing into Google to find you? What is the problem that they have? And then how do you think they arrived at that problem? So that is one of the best ways it's exactly how I write the copy for my membership sales page. Is I say, look, I know that this is how you're feeling, or you're probably dealing with X. If I had to guess, I'm betting that Y makes you crazy and that ABC makes you so excited.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love
Mhm.
it's such a I always say to my members and my clients, if you can learn anything, learn copywriting.
Oh,
because
preach or choir, girl. It's
because
so true.
it's something you'll always need. You're constantly redoing sales pages, you're coming up with new offers, hopefully not too often. You're improving your offer, you're improving everything in there. Okay, so before we go down that even more, because we could probably talk about copy forever, I'd love to
Yeah.
hear more about how you got your course business off the ground, because we
Yes.
talked about the fact that you're in a beginning phase in your membership. You said around
Yes.
6 months,
Yes.
but you didn't start as new as a lot of people, because you had a decent sized business with courses. So do you want to talk about that a little bit to give some
Yes.
context for then how you transitioned into the membership?
Absolutely. And I think it's so important because anybody looking at my membership right now would be like, oh my gosh, she was immediately successful. And I'm so glad to be able to share this story. And Lisa's bringing up such a good point. I did not start from zero. I was a freelance copywriter for a couple of years. And that was after I was sort of transitioning out of acting and being like, is this really what I want to do? And what I was finding, and this comes to my why, is that I was being hired pretty exclusively by women who felt really, really, really nervous that they were annoying people.
Mm. It's
And they,
such a
yeah,
female. That is actually a
it
female
is
problem.
such a yes. And, I know I'm using a lot of gendered language here, but it's so true. Women are taught that we are supposed to be attractive and that if we're successful, people will come to us. It is very weird feeling to be like, here's why you should work
Yeah.
with me. Here's why, where I shine. Here's my expertise. We feel, and we have to work with that, right? We're not going to wave a magic wand and make that go away. So we have to work with that feeling.
Yeah.
And what I found was that these women were hiring me over and over and over again and spending thousands of dollars
Mm.
to have me write things for them because they were so afraid almost to like step into that themselves and learn how to communicate
Well,
themselves.
and then you were able to sort of push that. So while you're doing the work for them, you're also showing them what it can be like to say things in a stronger way without sounding strong.
Salesy. Yeah,
Yeah. Like
exactly. You can,
overbearing.
yes, exactly. So what I decided I wanted to do was I took all of my copywriting knowledge that I had taken like $10,000 worth of classes and really had it, dialed in. And I was like, what if I were a business owner who didn't have thousands of dollars to hire a professional copywriter? What are the most important things that I would need to know? What are the like, just give me the formula, give me the why this works and show me how to do it. And I created my signature course copy class. The beta launch was in a bundle. And from that bundle, I think I had immediately 7,000 people sign up. So
What?
that, yep.
So a
So
giant
that
bundle.
it was a big bundle. It was in 2020. It was right. I mean, there were so many things that
Because that's like
aligned.
huge. Like I've never even heard of that being, I don't, yeah, I mean, I'd have to know the details, but that's like quite a bit of percentage of people who are in the bundle.
Yes, it was a lot of customers. It was a
And
lot of
a
people.
lot of people in the bundle in the first place. So some bundles don't even get that big, right? So it was
Right.
obviously, and probably early on in the bundle thing, whereas now I've got a lot of people asking, will you be in this bundle? And I'm like, no, I think I'm done with bundles
Yeah.
because
So that's an
it's like people
important
are saturated.
that's an important sidebar. The path that worked for me probably wouldn't work again for me, right? So you can't predict necessarily that something's going to be that successful
Yeah.
and fireworks like that. Again, it was a perfect storm. It was 2020. Everyone was transitioning to online. It was the very beginning of the whole bundle thing. There were a lot of sort of fancier people, I would say, who were in the bundle with me. There were many, many reasons why this particular bundle happened to be a really successful thing for me. But what did happen was 7,000 people signed up, which told me this idea, this course has legs. Like
Yeah.
this is something people are dying to know about. And what was really telling to me was how many notes I was getting from people. Thank you notes. Oh my gosh, I finally feel like I can do this. And
Well, okay,
from
so I want to
there,
sidebar this a little bit more because it's not new. So I'm curious to know more about like
what's
because
not
I
new?
learned copy a long, long time ago, and there's tons of people who
Oh,
teach copy.
copywriting's not
So
new.
this is why
Sure.
I get it, timing, right audience, all these things. But I think the important part is that you got your start and you got your know, like, and trust. And I think that's the challenge is anyone could get that big break, kind of rest on it, get a bit stuck in it, and then not continue that momentum. And then it can literally be 3 years later, and you could be barely making ends meet.
Right. So, what I really want to call out in this case, that, in my use case, is before I launched this course, I really paid attention to the competition and the landscape. And I really tried to understand, where is the hole? What is
Right.
the need that needs to be filled? And what I
Yes.
found, my value proposition is something that I do not see anybody else doing, which is copywriting for non-writers. I am not teaching people how to become copywriters, and I'm not just doing copy for business owners. I'm specifically tailoring this class for online business owners
Yeah.
who hate writing. So if anyone really understands what's the thing your person hates the most, and you can alleviate that fear, that is going to set you up for so much more success than just teaching the skill. I could just teach the skill without the aspect of being like, this is for
Who's it
non-writers,
for? Yeah.
and it would not be as successful.
I see
right?
what you mean. So it's just it's in that minutia language, because I think I think this is super interesting, because it's not just for people who don't know how to do copywriting. It's for the ones who dislike it. That's the differentiator right there. It's the dislike, don't want to like.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
kind of,
But know that they need it. Right. I mean,
right,
as you
right. Because
said,
online business owners all need it, but you might get online business owners that are like, oh, but I like writing, but I can't adopt it. So you're really, it's like my membership for a Scaling Deep Society. It's like build a lasting membership. So it's like the differentiator is that lasting piece. It's that it's going to build on itself. It's going to last for a while. It's going to have an impact, instead of just like build a site, make money. It's got a thing that hooks a certain person that is a probably really ideal fit for me.
You know? But the key to make it a sustainable thing is to keep listening, because problems are evolving, problems are changing. So now, what I really pay attention to is I build in feedback in my course to have people ask me questions because of exactly this, not just for my course, but for my entire suite of products and my membership. It's leading to why I created a membership in the first place. Yes.
So how do you build the feedback in? How do you do that? I'd love to hear that.
So I use the course platform Kajabi, and on the course builder on the back end, you have the option to do something called a feedback form, I believe it's called, but it's called an assessment. Excuse me. It's called an assessment inside the course building software. Sure. And so what it looks like is you have your lessons, your video lessons, your PDFs, and then like the last lesson, instead of it being another video, it's a text box with a prompt. Nice. And it says, what are you liking so far? What are you still hoping to learn about? Are you hung up on anything? Is there anything you wish there would be more explanation? And I do that in every module. And so what that gives me is two things. One, testimonials, and two, really helpful research.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And you know really, what? Really you don't even need, like, I'm thinking about how this adapt to different platforms that may not have an actual like box to say give feedback. It would actually make a lot of sense. Or you could even build it into an extra module in any course that said, click this link, quick link to send me a message or something, right? Like anything. Right. So I think that's a really great idea. I love it. And I think a lot of people could be doing more of that. A lot of people aren't going to do it, but just the little bits you get are going to be amazing.
They totally are. So I took those questions that people were asking me, and I realized, so I launched Copy Class in 2020. So that was, 3 years ago. And what is time? And
going too quickly, I'll tell you.
Yeah, for real. And I also at that time got hired by a big tech client. And so I wasn't doing as much copywriting. I was just running the course kind of evergreen, but I was still getting all of these messages. And I would like reopen it a couple times a year and get a big flood of messages. And I was still providing value to my email list and stuff, but I wasn't as in the weeds building the business, right? I left that tech job at the end of 2022. And in 2023, I was like, I want to go back all in to Magic Words copywriting, which is my business. Nice. And I did a lot more market research with Copy Class. And I realized, oh my gosh, I have so many of the exact same questions that have nothing to do with copywriting, but have to do with how to use the copy. Okay,
Mm.
great. I have this website written. How do I get it online? I have a freebie written. How do I build a funnel? I
Oh,
have content and blog ideas. How often should I even be putting this up? I have a bio that's great for pitching press, I guess, but where do I even begin? So that is how I got the idea. How do I serve these people? Well, why not a membership somewhere where they can come like one to many instead of doing a ton of one on one, like one off things where their questions might not even be answered and they might not even know what questions to ask.
well, especially when you're at that level that sort of they're still at that beginnerish level.
Yes.
Well, at least a chunk of them will be. And you've just got to choose at some point which audience you're going to serve. And that's sometimes our ascension programs are often based on what we want to do. Like, do we want to work one-on-one with people? Because it really is sort of a choice at that time, right?
Yes.
But yes,
Mhm.
you can base it on the majority of the people you have, but you can also base it on like, here's what lights me up.
Yes, exactly. And you recently had an episode on pricing, and I absolutely agreed with what you were saying about having the idea of the value that you're delivering meeting the expectation of the price.
Mm-hmm.
And when I looked at my suite of products, Copy Class is a premium product. It costs almost $1,000. It's a
Right.
huge, like, multiple group coaching calls, one on one, like over the shoulder writing. There's so much. It's a premium product and it only opens twice a year. But I
Okay.
wasn't really serving the people who needed that consistent support in a low, like
Well, it's
a
like you
more
learn a thing, but now you've
background
got to
way.
continue to do the thing. And then what?
Right. And I didn't want to have to create a premium product again. And I didn't want to have to create a premium product consistently. So while my membership is extremely well done, delivered beautifully, there's a whole portal with, you know, the lesson and the worksheets and the once a month call. And I love my membership so much. And we'll get into that in a second. But I never have to do more work for the membership. It's always the same. I can expect to weave that into my personal calendar and timeline, no matter if I have 20 people or 200 people.
Yeah, it's
So,
the beauty of a membership. It's just the time. Okay, after the setup and after the initial bit of content, the time, like the amount of time to maintain is because people are doing different things. Like I had a
right,
call today, 4 people showed up. A bunch of other people asked questions in the Heartbeat platform. And then there's tons of people watching the course. And then there's other people watching the recordings to the calls. And this is all happening in the same week, right? In the
right.
same day. And that's the best thing about it, right? It's just that understanding and being in contact with people because I can
Yes.
imagine the course business being like, great, people are, I mean, you've got the feedback stuff coming in, but it can be quite quiet. And sometimes that does not light us up to do our best work out in the world and content, and especially that free content when we're not being stimulated by actual conversation or seeing what people are working on and how they're using it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think there is this irreplaceable exchange of energy, to get a
Mm-hmm.
little hippie woo woo, that happens in the membership that does not happen with a one time digital product, or that does not happen with a one time copywriting contract. I now have been doing the membership for 6 months, and some of the people who've been in this since the beginning, I feel like a proud mama bear. Like I'm
Yeah.
watching them grow. I'm watching them get press placements. I'm watching them launch these products. And it's so fun. And I feel so personally both invested and gratified. You also want to show up to do better work because you're like, oh, people are trusting me. Like people are trusting me they're trusting me to guide them here. So I take it very
Well, and you
seriously.
want to keep people going. So they might learn a bunch of things when they join, and then you're thinking about them 9 months later,
Right.
12 months later, what is going to re-engage them into something that is interesting that I've learned. So it does put you at your best in terms of your own relevancy and your own leadership, which is
Mm-hmm.
great because you want to be in your purpose. And it's important to do good work. Like that's what we're kind of wired for, right? Like we feel best
Yeah.
when we're feeling fulfilled, when we're actually helping people in real quality ways.
Yes. That's so true. That's so
That's
true.
a lot of why we do this, right? And why
Oh,
we're not
yeah.
doing some get rich quick thing, right?
Yes. Well, and that brings me to something we were talking about before we hit record, which was that I wanted to share that I didn't come to the membership game from zero. I
Mm-hmm.
came with a big email list of 4,000 people, and I have 20 people in the membership. And that to me feels awesome.
Yeah.
And it feels glacially slow because let me tell you, going
I love this
from,
truth. Thank you. Because it
yeah,
is true. Like people only see the success stories out there. And there are, for every one of those, there's like 100,000 people who are at some way far away level.
yeah, yes.
Not to say they can't do it, but like, okay, so imagine the business that is relevant, is providing good value, makes slower connections. I have a slower connection too. I don't crank inputs into my system. I do not spend thousands on ads, and that's all I do is ads and then some bundle and summit stuff. But like I really don't have a huge like massive social presence, and ads are pricey, so it's not that much. So I'm not going to get the volume. You're not going to get 100 people or even 10 people signed per month unless you're spending the 10,000 or 100,000 kind of, right? That's the context of this. So
A
so I
lot
think
of
it's like
people aren't even aware that that kind of money is what's being spent.
spent. Yes. And it is true. It's 100% true. I have a person in my mastermind, and I swear, like, she puts in 76K to sell 125 in ads.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And that is like real stuff. But so let's see it this way. You have to put in the 75K first before you get the
Right,
125 of sales. And how many people are comfortable doing that? I mean, most of us don't want to put in 2K to
right.
get like 3 or 4 out of it. And that's so because you have to pay that regardless of whether that works. So it's like a really slow ratcheting. And so there is this point where you get your break. Like it might be like you, like right time, right place, right audience, where you're like, you've got a great thing and you happen to be connected to the right spot where that was just like what everyone needed.
Mm.
Or some organic social thing happens, or some ad thing makes sense. And all of a sudden you're like, I could put a zero on this. Like I could put in 10K instead of one, and that happens. And you have to be aware of that and put that momentum into it at the time. So you still can't just go, oh, I've made it. But it's more like until you get that, you're working on that small margin. Like you're working on that. Everything I do could turn out to be so growth oriented at any given time, but you can't expect it. Like, and that's, I think, what you're saying. It's like,
Mhm.
it just doesn't happen quickly, but it doesn't have to be right, like to be a
Yeah,
great
and
job.
anybody, and I just want to say this is my own soapbox, forgive me, but anybody who's trying to sell you something different, run.
Yeah.
Anybody who's trying to sell you the make 100,000, make six figures in your first month or whatever, like run, because it's not, that's not the point, right? The point, well, it's not the point for if you want something sustainable.
No, and it's not possible. It's just not possible. And
Yeah,
but I think, I think that's kind of the sad thing though, is that people don't get that and they do
I
really want to get
know.
told that it's all going to be great. And I
I
think
know.
that's the hard part of it. But being like integrity in business, like you and me, it's like, I
It's
won't,
hard.
I won't say, oh yeah, I'll get you, you'll get here. Cause I'm like, look, I can give you the best foundation that you're going to ever find and the most honest foundation, but you're going to hit you're going to fail like 100 times. And if you are like, if you're going for it and you're doing a great job and you're putting things out often enough to get actual like traction eventually, and you
Right.
properly run the experiment, you're going to see that. Like, imagine a scientist, like, imagine how many times they put a little thing into an incubator or whatever it is, or a test tube, this like failed experiment, you know,
Yeah.
to see a result they think is going to happen. I mean, that is that scientific process that we do need to apply, but we're not really taught that.
Yeah. Well, and again, for scientific process minded people, come back to your ideal customers. Anytime you're feeling stuck, anytime you're feeling like this isn't working, you may feel like you know better, like you know what people need, but ask and like prove that it's what people need or the way in which they need it, right? So if like there have been things that I've tried that have failed, of course. I'm an online entrepreneur. I've had crickets
Yeah.
many times. And it doesn't phase me like it used to. Anytime it happens, I think, okay, it's because I had an idea and I didn't prove it first. I didn't prove it with the market. I didn't prove it with the people I'm trying to help. And the thing is like, you may think you know what somebody needs, but let them show you how they want to be communicated with.
Well, it's
And
usually
then,
it's usually a communication gap. I mean, I think like I know exactly what people need, but it's not a formula. It's just
right.
you need to experiment. You need to have validation. You need to have someone to talk to when you feel like so doubtful that you're going to do nothing for 2 weeks. And you're going to need to really dig in honestly and say, am I willing to show up and ask for help? Because
Yeah.
I was saying this in an earlier podcast interview, is that no one, you could pay them $10,000 a month, $20,000 a month. They are not your brain. They are not in your head. And they're not going to every day go, what does Lisa need? What does Lisa need? Oh, Lisa needs a pep talk. Like no one can be in your day enough to make you do stuff. Like you have to show up and go, hey, so-and-so, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
What do I do? And so your willingness to show up is the only thing that's really going to take you there. And so that's where I feel like saying to people, like, you want this, you need this kind of level of support. Like you need somebody in your back pocket that you can reach out to who's qualified and is going to give you objective feedback. But not everyone, I think, trusts themselves enough or their idea enough or their own tenacity. So not everyone's ready for that. That's okay too. So I think like how you communicate that and how often you get that message across and how many people it takes to be ready for the thing that they need is also part of that. Like you can communicate it better, but then you'll still get people who will not be ready. So in
Yeah.
some ways you have to like do that attract and that communicate, but then also be okay with it's not their time.
You know, that brings me to something that I actually teach in copy class, which is coach the decision, not the sale.
Oh, I love that.
And it is exactly what you're talking about. Like you can lead the horse to water, you cannot make them drink. And a lot of entrepreneurs can take it personally when they lead the horses to the water and the horses don't drink. Here's the other thing. Again, another nerdy statistic. It used to take on average 9 times for people to be exposed to something to make a purchase. That has changed. This is a statistic I believe that was published by Business Insider. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. That now with the arrival of TikTok in particular, it takes on average 36 times. That is wild. You need to be exposed to either a product or a person an average of 36 times before you trust it enough to buy it. And I'm talking about like significant purchases. I'm not talking about like a $5 candle at Target.
Yeah. So picture the entrepreneur who that has changed so much in how many years. And yet in our own journey, we have not learned to sell 10 times as much. We don't feel 10 times as confident selling our thing.
Correct.
The leveling upness that we have to do is like, just when I thought I was getting good at this, I now have to do this. And that doesn't mean good. It means like willing to show up and be crappy.
Yeah.
Willing to sell 1,000 times and feel like I'm being generous to you by encouraging you to join this program, like changing our mindset around it.
Yeah.
And willing to get support.
Totally. And realizing that not all of the work that you did in your marketing process was for naught. There are people who have told me that they've been thinking about joining copy class for over a year before they do it.
Yeah.
And they follow me on social media. They download all the free things, whatever it is. And again, copy class is a premium product. It's almost $1,000. So I get that. It's a longer decision-making process. But if I had given up on the people who didn't buy, 2 launches ago, then I wouldn't have nearly as many.
Yeah. So I mean, yes, there will be people who will never buy or never feel ready. And that's okay because that's their own stuff. But you still have to keep inviting them in and find ways to do that. And then you also just need to get in front of new people. I mean, that's actually an interesting thing. So with your new membership, you might find that even it's a different thing that you sold from the last thing. So it'll be interesting for you to experiment with bringing new people into your world straight into the new offer because it's slightly different, isn't it? It's like,
oh, absolutely. Well,
so in a way you've pivoted it a little bit with next level versus pivoted to like, okay, keep learning your copy in this membership format.
Exactly. So that's actually a really good point to hone in on. Yeah. Not everybody is going to do the same thing. This might not work for many people, but it's what's working for me, which is, again, I focus on what are the questions people are asking me and I answer them in the membership. And what I found was, so I should just tell y'all what the heck is my membership,
yes.
Right?
Please do.
My membership is called BYOB, which stands for Build Your Own Business. It is meant for people in the first 0 to 12 months of building a business, or if people are coming back to business after like being frustrated with it. I love those people. And it focuses on one needle moving aspect of building your business every single month. And the reason I do that is because I know from firsthand experience as a business owner myself, but also from hearing from so many people that it's not even about the learning, it's the follow through.
Yeah.
So we change the topic every month, which really has been helpful for keeping people coming back. Because it's not like they came in to work on their copy, they worked on their copy, and they're like, well, I'm not going to stay in the membership. I already worked on my copy. I don't need to, it's much more likely that they're going to want to stick around because, oh, next month is about pitching myself to press and podcasts. Ooh, I haven't learned that yet. Oh, next month is about social media content strategy. Oh God, I hate it, but I got to learn it, right? There's a different topic that speaks to a very specific question that the same ICA has over and over and over and over again. So the ideal customer avatar, that's what ICA stands for, if you didn't know, the same ideal customer avatar for every single month, even though the content of the membership is changing. It is always about the ideal customer. And
so that's the thread that makes your membership unique is that you're asking them to do all these things and learn, show up to whatever they want to.
Correct.
And then, but think about it with their ideal client or in mind.
Yes. And the questions that I'm answering are my ideal customers.
Oh, questions. I see. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, listen, the way I teach is the way I practice what I preach.
Right.
And so, yes.
So you have a lens of that copy, like always, like all the stuff that you're doing for visibility and all the things you're learning, like you're always thinking about how does it relate to that
totally
conversion.
like brief example,
Yeah.
just to make this super clear, is the How to Pitch Press and Podcasts month. We talked about how in every reader's mind, there's only one question, which is what's in it for me? And the biggest mistake I see people do is they lead with talking about themselves instead of talking about, this is the value I'm going to share with your audience.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I get those pitches.
Yeah, you get that a lot, I'm sure, as a podcaster.
Like you didn't even know that who I interview.
Yeah.
Not this person made millions overnight doing this thing that's unrelated to my business. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really important in my business, and it's also something I teach, to think about the ideal customer first before anything else. What's in it for them? How do you communicate that in a way, like in a tone that they can receive it? Some people want ball busting, like get in there, coach type energy. Some people want nurturing yoga teacher energy. Some people want best friend energy. That is the art part, right? That's
right.
You. That's the business owner. That should not change. What changes is, what's the question you're answering? What problem you're solving? You get it.
That's great. No, I love it. I mean, yes. I mean, I think that is critical to everything. And that's why having a copywriter in your back pocket is always a great thing. Or a business strategist who gets this, it's super valuable. People need to learn to empathize. And it's like the answer to most of the world's problems too. So really, it's a good skill. So I think it's interesting. So tell me a little bit, like before we wrap up, I want to hear a little bit more about what are you doing to grow it now? What's working? What do you need to work on?
I love that. So as I said, first step, I had to just accept that growth is slower with a membership.
Well, while you figure it out, like it'll be, I mean, it can be slow with a course too, if you haven't nailed the value prop and the outcome. So I just want to put that out there because I see lots of courses that don't do well either.
Totally. I think, to add a little more color, it feels different doing a big launch for a course that only opens twice a year.
Yeah.
And like that type of marketing, that cart open, close marketing, that sense of urgency is built in, versus a membership, which is more sustainable and consistent. People can join anytime and cancel anytime. In my case, I know that that's not always the case for memberships, but because the content changes every month, I do give people the opportunity to join anytime. So knowing that it is a different method of marketing that is a more evergreen style of marketing. So
for how you're doing it. So you're learning a new thing. Like, how do you work on the always open thing, which might have, if you'd done it with your course program, the signature one, it might have been a similar type of thing if you're working on that evergreen model, right?
Right. So while I had my tech job, my course was evergreen.
Oh, I see.
And it was successful. Like it did fine, it did fine, but I didn't have those big spikes of income like I do when I do the cart open close. And that's just psychology, right? Everybody kind of gets that at this point. We know that we're going to get the email that the cart's closing in 3 hours. If we know there's going to be an early bird thing, like we've seen it enough now, we know what that is. Yeah. Right. So with BYOB, what I'm learning is I am seeing the most success so far with talking about the topic that is coming up in BYOB the month prior in my emails and on my social media. So I'll exactly lay out what that looks like so that people really understand. This July the topic was, oh my gosh, now I'm having a brain fart. How to write a lead magnet, how to optimize a lead magnet for a 2023 audience that actually drives to paid revenue, right? Revenue driving lead magnets.
So are you sending that out to your list every month with this? So, because I think that's interesting That's an interesting way to engage your list. Oh, we could go down this marketing
So,
rabbit hole.
well, let me just
Okay.
close the loop. So,
Yeah.
the topic in BYOB for the month of July was lead magnets, which meant June, the month leading up to it, on social media and in my emails, I talked a lot about email marketing and the importance of lead
Yeah.
magnets. Then, when it came to the end of the month, by the way, the topic in BYOB next month is how to write a profitable lead magnet. That drove the signups. The important thing to note there, though, is I am teaching something totally different every month. So the same person
Yeah.
might not be interested in lead magnets, but they are interested in a holiday marketing strategy. So they may join because of a totally different topic.
So in a way, you're micro selling to people based on the thing that that could be really interested. It's that hook. It's like the selling the hook. It's just so fascinating because I think this does really work. And I think a lot of people could add that into, like, if you can layer that into your new member acquisition, if people have never heard about you, that circuit or system, the two together would be amazing.
Exactly. So if I zoom out, right, and I look at new eyes, new followers, new email subscribers, which is a completely different thing. That is my overall umbrella of I want people to be engaged with my brand. That is still the same ideal customer of someone who feels really overwhelmed. Like there's a bajillion things that people are telling them that they should be doing, and they have no idea how to actually execute any of them. It's the same ideal customer, right? So whether I am bringing them into the full umbrella or whether I'm targeting them because they're already on my list and I want them in BYOB, it's the same problems, and they are choosing their own adventure on how I solve the problem for them. Because some people the membership isn't for them. Copy class is for them. Some people, neither. They just want to work with me one-on-one and be done with it. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So it's the same ideal customer, but your membership is another opportunity to A, have an additional revenue stream, and B, to engage a part of your audience who may not be an exact fit for other things that you offer.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I think that's great that you're continuing to invite people in. And I think that you found your system for it because of that theme, that sort of new, like, oh, it's just easy to communicate that, be like, here's what we're doing this month. There's another chance to get in. Whereas in some cases, it doesn't make sense because you won't want to keep inviting people in every single month to something that they haven't bought for the last 5 months. And the message is kind of the same. So I think this is why I feel so strongly about people really finding their sales system. And I loved your sharing it because it's just different for everyone. And depending on what your membership offer is, there's going to be something that's going to be a little bit better. And for some people who are watching this, they're like, oh, this is exactly how we run our membership. We need to like think about how we can do this and really share with our existing audience what we're working on, because that's a great loop back into it.
Full transparency, it takes the pressure off of me to come up with crap to say. Like, if I know what the topic is, that gives me somewhere to go.
Yeah.
If I look at what are the questions people are asking, it's also just because I don't want to do the mental lift of like figuring it all out. I just let my ideal customer tell me, and then I talk about it, right? It takes so much pressure off of the membership puppet master. What would you even say? Runner?
Well, I mean, I call it leading learner. So I think for like in my case, I am learning a ton. I'm often sharing what I'm working on and what I'm learning. And that's, or how I'm making changes and why. And that's a leading learner approach, which there's both, because you always have to remember that people might not be where you're at as a leading learner. Like, I could do a Facebook ads thing and half the people will be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. I like the term though, leading learner.
So it's kind of like a combo, it's like we always have to keep ahead for the people who've been there for a while of what's like some of the advanced stuff. And then we're always looking at what are those basics? So I think that combo is like really valuable in terms of delivery, and you can still do that within themes.
Yes. And also just being honest with yourself about knowing what you actually want to do and how you want to do it. There are people who come to me and they're like, I know that email is so valuable. And I also know that I just am never going to be consistent with email and I need help. So, knowing what you feel lazy about, knowing what you're most likely to do and most likely not to do is so helpful when setting up that sales system. Let me tell you.
Oh, I agree. I agree. I think you've got to put your best foot forward, and you've got to find that one that works and the least pain, right?
Least
My
pain.
least pain is spending money on ads. My most pain is showing up on social and being like, here's everything.
Yep. And my least pain is conversations like this. So I'm so happy that
Yeah.
you brought me on the podcast. I think
Yeah.
podcasts are such a unique way of communicating. And it's so fun to think about, like, oh, somebody's listening to this in their car right now, and they're going to go home and they're going to maybe think about how a membership might work for them, or do they maybe want to change up a membership they already have? And it's just so cool. It's so
Oh,
cool.
it's
It's like we
fun.
get to
Yeah,
be
it's really
friends
fun.
for an
It's really
hour.
helpful because it's I think the depth is there, right? I think I'm a real fan of long form content, and this is that type of thing. I prefer it. So sometimes we also do what we wanted, like what we enjoy. We're
Yes.
not always our best client. That's true. But we have a passion for how we do it and how we show up. And that's totally true. So thank you for sharing all that with us.
Of course.
Well, where can people find you? I know you mentioned the name, your awesome name of your membership, by the way. That's really catchy.
Thank you. I am a copywriter, so I knew it had to be good, right?
Yes.
Yes, my membership is BYOB, and you can find everything at kelseyformost.com. If you want to see some free tools, kelseyformost.com/freebies. I've got some really great guides there that are very much my teaching style, like quick to the point. Here's the formula, but don't lose who you are. And then you can learn about Copy Class, which is the doors are opening again at the end of September. So you can get on the wait list, which means you get a fancy discount and early bird bonuses and all
Nice.
that jazz. And you can also just contact me, hang out with me. I'm mostly on Instagram at kelsey.writes, WRITES. And I would love if you told me that you heard me on this podcast. And that way we can nerd out together about memberships.
Perfect. Again, thank you so much. So helpful. And I hope you guys all go over and check out her stuff and learn how to be a great copywriter first and foremost.
Pun intended.
Yeah, actually, yeah. All right. Thanks again.